On October the 31st, a spectacular show premiered in the western German city of Dortmund. A pop oratorio entitled Luther, based on the life of the great church reformer Martin Luther. With a choir of more than 3,000 voices, comprised of men and women from the region.
What's fascinating about this oratorio, or musical if you like, is that it presents Luther as an ambiguous figure, not simply as a good person. He's flawed. He's also a sinner, and he's very much aware of that.
The only one in my family who's actually Lutheran. I originally come from northern Germany, where the separation of the various Protestant churches is still very pronounced. Everyone in the family is Protestant, but I am also Lutheran. So I had no choice but to think about and consider Luther, the man.
I used to think of Luther as one of those people we learned about in religion classes. We saw the film about his life and talked about it a bit at school. But that was the extent of it.
I've been to Wittenberg, and of course we talked about Luther. It was a trip organized by our parish, a youth group and our pastor. I learned quite a lot about Luther when I was there.
Am Anfang war das Wort und das Wort war bei Gott.
The whole Kleinchorus family is involved in this musical project.
Und Gott war das Wort, und Gott war das Wort.
I love singing Christian music, hymns and songs with a Christian message. I think it makes a positive contribution to the world because it comes from God.
The Luther Oratorio was first performed in the town of Witten, here in the Church of Christ in February 2015, and recorded for a CD.
It's about groove. Of course, the content is also important, but we need to concentrate on the groove. This is primarily a choir master's workshop. All the choir masters are here and I'm presenting the work. Afterwards, they'll go home and practice the piece with their singers. In effect, I'm presenting the overall picture and telling them a bit about the story, the context, and the historical background. And then we are also recording the CD that will form the basis for training the large choirs.
Wir sind Gottes Kinder, wo auch immer, keiner ist allein und sind wir auch Sünder. Es muss niemand ohne Hoffnung sein, oh nein.
It's going great. Everybody's very focused, very committed. It's fun, but we're also achieving something. We're getting through it very quickly, and it sounds wonderful. Of course, Dieter is very talented. He knows what he wants, and he gets it out of us. He's behind it 100%. He's a bundle of energy. It's not something you come across often.
This is not only a religious crime story, it's also a political thriller. The whole story surrounding Luther is really a political drama. It involved a lot of money and corruption. The Fugger family were the powerful bankers at that time, and Michael has compared them wonderfully with the dealings of the big banks today.
Michael is the librettist, Michael Kunze, a songwriter and lyricist who's written a number of hit songs and successful musicals in German.
Luther very clearly expressed what he wanted, and his actions also make it very clear. He was concerned about the Word of God, the way he understood it from the Gospels. He did not want an organization like the Church to intervene and, as it were, impose its interpretation, because he said, why? We don't need a human institution that interprets the Word of God. We want each believer to be able to hear this Word and apply it to their daily lives.
There are more than 50 gold and silver records hanging in Dieter Falk's studio. The 55-year-old composer is one of Germany's most successful music producers.
Message is such a pretentious word. We are not the Electronic Church of South Carolina putting on a spectacular Bible show. That's not what we want. It's not our thing. We want to tell a great story, a very exciting one, of a person that undisputedly changed the culture of this country and the whole world.
This, in a sense, is where the Pop Oratorio was created. Dieter Falk wrote his compositions and arrangements here.
What interested me was how to turn a subject that on the surface might seem a bit uptight or maybe formal and boring, sterile and churchy — church is actually very unsexy — into something that appeals to the broad mainstream public so that they groove along with it and have fun. That was the real challenge.
The famous Babelsberg movie studios on the outskirts of Berlin, home to the German Film Orchestra. In March 2015, the Oratorio's orchestral sections were recorded here. The Babelsberg Orchestra specializes in movie soundtracks and stage music.
The story of Luther is very emotional. It's not just about politics and religion, it's about a man and his struggles and his feelings. I think a big orchestra helps tremendously to bring music alive and make it emotional. That's why I often come to Babelsberg to record with the film orchestra. And I am very, very glad to be able to do this with the Luther project.
The recording sessions in Babelsberg provide the finishing touches to the CD. The Kleinkorres family lives in a suburb of Duisburg, about an hour's drive from Dortmund.
I've always called it a musical, but it says Pop Oratorio. These are for you. Great, isn't it?
I have the impression that many people no longer view Luther as such an important figure. When I was young, much more emphasis was given to the differences between the various religions, even the differences within Protestantism. That's not really the case anymore. People no longer fight about the specifics of faith. That's a fascinating development, and no doubt it's a product of our time. Lots of people from different religions marry, for instance, and they have to come to an agreement of some sort.
Jochen Kleinkorus listens to the recording before holding the first rehearsal with his gospel choir.
The reason I go for this kind of choral music is simply because I know that there are a lot of people who have a sense of spirituality, but no way of expressing it. They may not have any connection to a church. They don't attend services regularly. They don't belong to any group, although they may have at some point, because there are also other important things in life.
The scores have arrived. It's April 2015, just 7 months to the premiere.
Martin Luther hat erklärt, der Ablass sei nichts wert, doch die Kirche.
Instead of singing gospel, the choir will spend 1 session a week learning the oratorio.
Schon ganz nah dran.
Luther gave his name to a church that still exists today. I don't just mean the Protestant church as such, but people who call themselves Lutherans, and even old Lutherans. And then there are the Reformed churches. All Protestant churches are derived directly or indirectly from Luther. Of course, there were other reformers, but none had Luther's enormous impact. In this piece, we get down to the core very quickly, the theology, Luther's vocation. And the core is perhaps when he says, I am a child of God, directly, without any mediation by the church or by priests or by other appointed people, other authorities. And I can talk to God without mediation. Being aware of this, being able to learn on your own and to think on your own, that's the main story in this Pop Oratorio.
Pop Oratorio.
The idea of composing the Luther Oratorio came from the Creative Church, a religious foundation based in Witten, just a few kilometers from Dortmund. The foundation has been promoting choral music for more than 20 years. Michael Kunzer and Dieter Falk collaborated on a similar project 5 years ago, the Pop Oratorio entitled The 10 Commandments.
We've discovered that these large-scale productions appeal to a lot of people. We're a Protestant foundation, but these shows go down well with Protestants and Catholics alike, as well as with people who don't belong to any church, who have very little contact with the church. Of course, with these projects, we hope to communicate a message that is important to us as the church, a message about faith, in this case, Martin Luther. We like to say, we produce entertainment with depth, and we want to involve a lot of people when doing so.
There are about 24 employees here, but it's the large number of volunteers who make these projects possible.
From the beginning of the Luther Project, there have been many, many partners, including the Church of Westphalia and the German Evangelical Church, who have supported us. And from the start, we were fortunate in having the Evangelical Church's Reformation Commissioner involved. She made an enormous contribution with regard to the theological aspects of the project.
Artists are free spirits. Naturally, I wrestled with Michael Kunze and Dieter Falk about some passages. For instance, where I thought that in the age of ecumenism, a Reformation anniversary ought not to be anti-Catholic. But of course, it's the telling of the story, and this story is inconceivable without Martin Luther's faith. And the trigger was his wrestling with God and the nature of God, so that you can't really separate the two.
The foundation didn't interfere at all in the creative work, and I'm very grateful for that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have turned out like this.
We are especially grateful that Margot Käßmann supported us. We were in continuous contact with her. I played her the demos, and she made very useful comments here and there where she said, "You could be a bit more sensitive, be careful that the story doesn't become too masculine," things like that. She was a very good counselor. But never, for a moment, did anyone of authority dictate what was allowed and what we had to do.
Gezeigt, was und wo wir dürfen und machen müssen.
Martin Luther published his famous theses almost 500 years ago, but the focus of this oratorio is the Diet of Worms, an imperial tribunal that condemned the reformer in 1521.
Right from the start, it was clear to me that I would not be able to present every aspect of a complex figure like Luther in a single evening. So I looked for a focal point into which I could bring as many aspects as possible that are still of interest to us today. The Diet of Worms seemed to be just that, a place where all of Luther's characteristics come together.
Was ihn ausmacht. Es geht gar nicht mich. Ich wär lieber namenlos in Demut.
Luther is played by Frank Winkels, a star of German musical theatre.
Ich bin kein Ketzer und kein Rebell. Dann wieder
If you see the man's will or intention as the fundamental emotion, this sense of, I am going my own way, I think that's a way of really getting into Martin Luther's character. Even if you can't say it's a completely faithful portrayal of the man.
Letzter Konsequenz 100%ig als Person fassen zu können.
Frank Winkels lives in Hamburg. Brought up as a Catholic, he no longer belongs to any church.
You can subscribe to many different faiths, but you shouldn't become dependent on a particular faith and try to anchor yourself exclusively in it. I believe the anchor is in yourself.
Frank Winkels has a popular following throughout Germany. He's appearing in a box office hit at Hamburg's Schmitz-Tivoli Theatre.
Komm so mit! Wir haben hier die schärfste Show auf ganz St. Pauli. Was ist die 10.000 Paintings und
Both productions are theatre and involve acting. You have to try to make both Luther and a role like this one, the owner of a bordello, believable. Even if it's a comedy, like this show, I think it only becomes funny and bizarre if you really mean it and play it credibly.
The Westfalenhalle in Dortmund, the end of April. For the first time, all 3,000 singers come together for the kick-off rehearsal.
Welcome, Frank Winkels.
The choir meets its Luther.
It's the icing on the cake when you hear how it might sound when the professionals are there.
There's a tremendous surge from all sides. It's great fun.
Back to the Church of Christ in Witten. It's mid-October, just 2 weeks to the premiere. The director, Andreas Gergen, and the soloists only have another 6 rehearsals. A very ambitious but carefully planned schedule. One of the 12 soloists is Paul Falk, Dieter Falk's son. At 18, he's the youngest of them and plays the role of the young Emperor Charles V. It was Michael Kunze's idea.
It was one of the few topics at school that I really liked. There are lots of things in history lessons that are pretty tedious, but I always thought that Luther was very interesting, because I think it's fascinating that a single person can achieve so much, that just one person can topple an entire power structure, and that he dared to do it.
Paul Falk also composed 2 numbers for the musical.
I want to maintain a low profile. It's the responsibility of the director to tell the performers how to play their roles. And Andreas is doing a great job. I only discuss musical aspects with Paul.
Dortmund, October the 31st, 2015, Reformation Day, and the premiere of Luther.
We want to rock the audience, as they say, and that's what we're going to do.
Tension is mounting for the choir and for the soloists.
Last night I made notes of where I have to move upstage and where I move downstage, because it's all new. This stage has completely different dimensions. The distances are longer, and some of the entrances and exits have changed.
While members of the choir take souvenir snapshots, the soloists are getting made up backstage. Then the show begins.
The audience is great, isn't it?
Fantastic.
I couldn't help crying, and then I couldn't sing.
It also happened to me.
I got pretty emotional.
I was pretty nervous when it began. You can't really imagine it. You're standing there in a 3,000-strong choir, and it doesn't come down to the individual. But you would like to make a contribution somehow.
The show is clearly a success. In 2017, on the anniversary of the Reformation, 500 years after Luther published his famous theses, the Pop Oratorio will set off on a nationwide tour.